miracle of human perspective.
This video came from YouTube.
It's trending on Twitter.
Why not on the news?
Lion will lie down with a lamb.
Come on, I'm starting the show here.
We're rolling.
Welcome to Unbiased and On the Fence. I'm Shane. Thank you so much for joining. We are joined with my guest today, Eileen Colt from One Channel. How are you doing today, Eileen?
Hey, Shane. Hey, everybody. Good to see y'all.
So glad to have you back.
Oops. I think I have a child coming through the front door.
Okay,
Hold
no
on.
problem. Here, I'll kill the audio for a second. So yeah, we wanted to get together on this program and discuss the some of the origins of the event and
Come through the door. There we go.
oh, okay, no problem at all. That's life, right? I've got my son.
That's life, right, in a house.
Yeah, my son's about to show up here too. So, I've rigged up a nifty little on-air light though that I have on. So if they do come in, they're like, "Oh, he's on air right now." So because I'm on air so much, you know.
I'm like sitting right by the front door. And you heard my little doorbell. 7-pound Yorkie. Yep, 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 yep.
Yorkies are so cute.
He's adorable. So sorry for that great introduction and interruption, but there we go.
Oh no, that was awesome. You gotta love life. You gotta laugh. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And even
Absolutely.
today, I'm watching my computer processor right now to see how it's done. But even today, one of my computers went out and we're down to one. So hopefully the stream health goes good. In fact, let me look at. Oh no, it looks like let's go audio. Because,
Okay, should I go audio too, or do you want to try one at a time?
yeah, let me just kill mine for now because that will help my computer tremendously. And yeah, it's like 98%, so it's almost working.
And
complete.
we just found out that Shane and I are working on computers that we both bought in 2012. And mine crashed this week, and Geek Squad got it, resurrected it. It's working again.
That's awesome. Yeah, that they could get it going again. And I've got one that's only a couple of years old, but that's the one that went out on me. So
Wow.
we can
Now,
work
I
with
can't
what we
see
got.
anybody's chat, just so you know, so I'll say hi up front to everybody, but I can't see the chat. It's not even on the screen when I'm on.
Yeah, that's why I went over and looked at the chat and saw it was kind of glitchy looking. But I probably need to close it too now that I see it is coming through. So I won't be able to view the chat. In fact, I'll open it on my phone here. But as an introduction, I want to read just this paragraph I came across when I was looking for a thumbnail for this, to do this today. And I thought, wow, this is perfect because, let me see, this was actually written a couple of years ago, but it's so perfect for our discussion today. And it's real short. It's coming and it's coming fast. Are your mind and body ready for the event? Ascension. We've been hearing and studying this most mysterious event for years now, almost a decade for me. Many of us believe it is coming and that there are those who also believe it has already happened or is happening. Regardless of whether anyone is right or wrong about when ascension should and will happen, we can all rest assured that learning to prepare our bodies and minds for this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity is just as good as experiencing the real thing.
I agree.
So it was funny. I came across that and I'm like, that's so perfect because nobody really knows. I mean, this is uncharted territory, but everybody's been talking about it from all these different perspectives. And that's sort of what I wanted to get into with you today because you have a lot of knowledge about, I was sort of stuck in Christianity my whole life, so which isn't a bad thing because I got to know it really, really well, but you have sort of a more comprehensive view of a lot of Eastern religions and things like that. And
Yeah, I studied a lot of different religions.
And that's awesome.
And they all kind of have it. They all share the rapture or the apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
Can you guys close the bedroom door?
And the Ascension event, light bodies and rainbow bodies and,
Yeah. Yeah, this is what you and I were talking about. It's like a conglomeration. Our current philosophy of the event is like an amalgamation of everything that's come before on an event like philosophy.
That's right. And it's a galactic thing as well, isn't it?
It is, yeah, it is. It gets into the Space Federation, which are tied into the Sumerian clay tablets from 5,000 years ago. And that's what I sent you today, so you can actually see where Enki wrote about the Space Federation. But I'm sorry, I got to get that door closed. Hold on.
No problem.
Okay, here we go. So I know you know a little bit about my background, and I think a couple of people in our community, our family here, which you've managed to bring us all together into one place, which is awesome, know that I was raised not only Christian but Catholic in the Middle East. So I spent some of my formative teenage years and early adult years living in a suburb of Cairo, which is what brought you and me together, because you
That's
did that
awesome.
video on pyramids.
Yes, that's so awesome to imagine
Yeah.
that because I remember living in Colorado for a while and waking up and looking at the magnificent mountains, and just to imagine waking up and being able to look out and see the pyramids must have been awesome. Could you see them from where you lived? I mean, were they?
No, but I used to go out and ride little Arabian fast horses around the pyramids every morning at 7.
Oh my
And
gosh.
the man his name was Zaki, and the man who had a stable at the pyramids spoke 7 languages.
Oh
And
wow.
he would ride his horse in his long white galabaya and his headdress on. And it was just like right out of, what is that, Lawrence of Arabia. So
Wow.
I got to be by the pyramids every day. And then I had this little Datsun car, no air conditioning, and it got up to be like 140 degrees in August. But my dad was frugal, so we had a car without air conditioning in Cairo. It's kind of funny.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and when I'd get like blue or lonely or something wouldn't be going right, I would just drive out there at night and just go sit on a pyramid. I'd literally, they came up to like my chest. So to climb them, which you could actually do then, I'm sure it was illegal, but there were no ropes around them or anything. You had to boost yourself up. So I wouldn't go up far. And I would just kind of sit there and meditate. So I did do one thing wrong. And around the pyramid, it's all rubbly and it's like crumbly. And I was like, oh, free pyramid stones. I'm just going to pick up a few on the pyramid that I'm not breaking off, right?
Hmm.
Put them in my pocket, take them to my apartment. And then when I went back home, the Chicago suburbs, because my mom lived in Chicago, my dad lived in Cairo, I took them home with me. And all these terrible things started happening. I mean, I was just like, these stones have got to go back. So I wrote my dad a letter. This is before internet. And I put the stones in a little envelope and padded them up. And I said, Dad, promise me on your life you will drive out to the pyramids and put these stones back on the pyramids where they belong. Don't throw them out a window. Don't throw them outside the apartment, entranceway. Get them back to the pyramid. These terrible things are happening to me and I need to return them. So my dad was like in his mid 50s, which I am now. And one of his great stories at dinner parties was he got this letter and he got these rocks. And he said, I'm just going to throw them out the window. I'm just going to put them in my pocket, walk downstairs and boom, empty my pocket and return these pyramid rocks to the street where they can get run over. And he said that no matter how hard he tried to do that, he couldn't do it. He actually had to put them in his pocket, drive out to the pyramids, walk up to a pyramid, and then look around. And when nobody was looking at him, he put the rocks back because he was embarrassed. He was like, I got to make sure nobody sees me returning these rocks.
Gosh,
So,
that reminds me
yeah.
of.
And
Oh, go ahead.
I mean, it's like Pele. It's like if you're going to take volcanic rocks, you better ask permission first from Pele. Do not take sacred rocks home.
Wow, that's so. Did things get better after they were returned?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Completely. And, who knows? Was it psychology? Was it my subconscious mind playing tricks on me? Like maybe I felt guilty picking up those rocks and bringing them to America. So I like arranged these really bad things to happen until I could return them. Or maybe those rocks had a bit of power and they didn't like being in Mount Prospect, Illinois.
I can totally see it either way, and I can see how you would consider it one way or the other, especially since you actually have a background in psychology. So, yeah, you
Yes.
had to wonder.
Yes. Yeah, see, I'm like you. I'm always on that fence, and I'm like, could be real, maybe not. Maybe my mind's playing tricks on me, you know?
Yeah, definitely. So did you feel power when you set out at the pyramids? Did they make you feel better? Did you feel energy, or what was it like?
Well, since I was visiting there from the age of 13 to 23, but I was living there from the age of like 17 to 23. And being like a teenager, young adult, I just loved being around the pyramids. And I wasn't really doing meditations back then, but I started seeing auras while I was living in Madi, a suburb of Cairo. I started looking at people, and if there was a white background anywhere behind them, I could actually see their aura. I could see the colors. So I told my mom about it, and she came out occasionally. And she said, "Oh, that's okay. It's okay to see colors, but you need to learn how to turn it off so it doesn't bother you."
Hmm.
And living downstairs was a Lebanese, very old woman with jet black hair and jet black eyes. I mean, she kind of looked like a good witch, basically. And
Hmm.
her name was Selwa. And she taught me at about the age of 18 how to like turn things on and turn them off with intention, which is great.
That's awesome. Let
Yeah.
me ask them in the chat here because they said you were freezing a little bit. I want to make sure it's not still freezing or if it's fixed itself.
It's completely clear on my end, you and me. Do you want me to turn me off and we can just chat
Are
and do
you?
like a blog?
I'm trying to see. Let's see. By the way, thanks. Oh, you're welcome. Is she still
You're
freezing?
welcome.
Okay, yeah, you're still freezing a little bit. So yeah,
Okay.
let's just go audio only. That way it doesn't.
Bye, guys. But you're going to be able to hear me. Shane taught me how to do this 10 minutes ago. Here we go. There we
Ah,
go. Oh, you
nice
got
flowers.
sunflowers.
Yeah, very nice. Let me see if it seems like it clears it up here. It's just strange
What do
the
you
way
think? Oh,
it seems like it should have completely
yeah, I
dropped
think
the
that's like
volume. But
solar energy. Energy. It's the low flare, high magnetism that we're going through right now.
oh, it went orange, so maybe it's gonna get better. We'll see when the stream catches up with it here.
I
Okay,
hope so.
so
So anyway, I had this great experience of growing up a Christian in the Middle East, which totally opened. And then I had that near-death experience at 17 while I was living there.
mhm.
So suddenly I knew we don't die. I just did a video on it last week. I never got out of the room where I was watching my body being resuscitated in Madi, Cairo, right outside of Cairo. So now I knew that I don't die, which made me much braver probably than I would have been. I don't know.
All right.
Like more risk taking because I know that you survive physical death, your consciousness does. Mine just like hovered in the room watching the process and I didn't get to go to the other side.
Mhm.
But I came back, went to university at Loyola in Chicago, and I did wind up studying journalism and psychology. But to graduate, you have to study the Bible from front to back, from back to front, and be tested on it.
Mhm.
So you've read the Bible, you know the Bible. I've let go of a lot of those facts. I think you know the Bible better than me. But what it did for me was as soon as I got out of university and started working as a journalist, I started to educate myself on world religions. I would read the Quran, the Mahabharata from India, the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. I would just kind of pick up anything that had to do with God that had ever been written by human beings, any age. I didn't care if it was current or ancient. So I spent 30 years just reading as much as I can from human beings writing about God. And at the same time, kind of delving into quantum theory.
Mhm.
And in my head, I have this left right mixture in my head right now of a quantum God because I understand how waves and particles work. And then I understand how human beings have been interpreting God and their relationship to God. And it's kind of all mixed up in my head. So, some of it's very scientific and some of it's very mystical and mythical.
I started to say, I bet the fact that you've read so many texts, it's probably hard sometimes to remember where you read what, and that seems
Yeah.
like it would be difficult because I have that in the Bible. It's like, what book of the Bible did this come from? And I try to
Yep.
remember. I can't imagine throwing some whole other libraries into the mix.
Yeah, unfortunately, my facts get jumbled, but the idea is correct. But the date and where it was written might be a little bit vague. Like my husband had a photographic memory, so he'd actually remember the dates and where things were written. And me, I'll just remember the gist of what was written. You
Right.
know, the facts kind of go, but the important message stays. You kind of get the message, but lose the context.
Right. And a lot of times being objective also makes you less likely to remember where the source was. If you put a little more validity, say you were really strong into Christianity, you might have been biased towards that. And then, you know,
Yep.
I don't know. It just seems like bias plays a big role in remembering things too, you know, because you put more weight into one particular thought. But this whole idea has really been around a while about ascension, whether it's, you know, these cosmic rays we're going through, or if it's, you know, just actual harvesting. I think was what law of one. I hate that term,
Yep.
but it came from
Yep.
Jesus, the harvest, you know, plucking out separating the wheat from the chaff, and
Yep.
this whole idea of some people going one place and some going to another, and they've built this whole idea of the rapture on that. And you know, there's a lot of information out there, but I really believe it's sort of all leaning towards the same thing. Even the article I just read, the little piece from, was talking about this solar flash event that Allison Coe was getting in some of her sessions. So it's just
Yep.
amazing because it's like rungs on the ladder of this overall big event, in my opinion.
It's all connected.
Yeah.
Well, just for you, because you warned me about this 2 days ago, I have spent literally 48 hours brushing up on my facts because there's so many different sources I've read, and I know which ones tie into the event. And I just needed to get a few more figures in my head today, like what years roughly were these things written, so that we'd have some kind of a timeline
Awesome.
on the event. Yeah. So I've spent literally 2 days just reading facts and figures and trying to get my timelines straight. 'Cause
Brushing
I
up,
think-
really.
yeah. So do you want me to just kind of give you just my personal, and you know, there is no such thing as purely unbiased information. Even if I try to present this to you without a bias of Christian versus Muslim versus Hindu versus Buddhist, it's coming through my brain. So whatever biases I have in my life are going to affect this information. But what I'm trying to do is be as objective as possible and leave out, like, well, I guess my personal beliefs are going to come into it a little bit, but I'm going to try to just talk about the facts now without my beliefs whatsoever, just based on what's out there. And you guys can do some research and do some digging, which you might find really interesting to kind of see where your beliefs are coming from.
Yeah, I think
You
a
know?
lot of people, I get comments all the time like, you're not unbiased because you did this or that. And it's like, unbiased doesn't mean I you know, don't have an opinion about something. It just means that I'm never 100% sure about something, and I'm always open to new information. So I'm going to lean towards one or the other because of the information, but it doesn't mean that I'm stuck in that idea. Like, and that's my whole point. It's like, don't get 100% sure about anything, because as soon as you do, you close yourself off to all this other information that could be true, but you won't ever know because you don't look at it, because you're so sure you have all the answers. So yeah, it's completely cool. I know how it is, and I know you'll be objective. That's why I love you so much, Eileen.
Oh, thank you. I love you too. And I love everybody in the chat. We've got such an amazing group here. It's incredible. I've never seen another group in one place.
Yeah, we're
You
like
know,
a think
certainly
tank
not.
figuring this out together, so it's all good.
Yeah, we are. We're Lightworkers Think Tank.
Yep.
And then when we're done here, we can run over to Josie's channel or Josee's channel or, you know, Allison Coe's or Angela's. There's so many now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Michelle, there's a lot of
Yeah,
them.
Michelle, that was awesome yesterday. I'm only about halfway through, but I promised to finish it. I was so enjoying that. I was working while I was listening today.
You'll enjoy the meditation at the end too. It was
good.
wonderful.
Oh, good. Now I'm going to get to it as soon as we're done here. Okay, so I'm going to try to give an objective timeline. Okay, so it's really complicated because it goes back as far, the event, the idea of the event goes back as far as humans have been writing. Isn't that exciting?
Yeah.
That it's part of our DNA, it's a part of who we are and what we believe in. So if you've read anything about the translations of the Sumerian clay tablets from Sumer, Babylon, Mesopotamia, about 4 to 5,000 years ago, there's over 150,000 of them, and they haven't all been translated yet. So we don't know everything that's contained within those mystical religious belief systems. But we do know that they wrote about the flood. We do know they wrote about Cain and Abel. We do know that they wrote about a savior. And we do know that they wrote about tribulation, which is also in the Bible, which is apparently what we're in now. We're in like the tribulation. We're being challenged daily, physically, mentally, spiritually. That's the time of tribulation. What we haven't found in those translations yet, unless you guys can find it and send it over to me or Shane, is the rapture. The rapture is kind of missing, but that doesn't mean it's not there. It might be a tablet they haven't read yet, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So what I did was, I actually researched, I'm pulling it up now, the oldest written rapture, and I'm going to see if it's going to pop up or not. Nope, you popped up. It'd be funny, I might have to summarize it if it's no longer here. Okay, it's popped off my screen. That's really interesting. Don't you find it interesting when you've saved something to your screen that you want to share with a bunch of people and you go down to find it and it's gone?
Yes.
But everything else is there? I find that interesting. I'm not saying like the boogeyman came in and took it off my screen, but it almost seems like it spiritually disappeared, you know?
Yeah.
Assyrian, Assyrian, the Assyrian, not Syrian, tablet that was found. It's currently in the British Museum, and it's about 7,000 years old. And that tablet has been deciphered. Now, it is a neighbor of Sumer and Babylon. It's not from the same area. It's from Nineveh or Nineveh. Have you heard of that before?
Yeah, Nineveh is the place where, you know, the story of Jonah in the well.
Okay, I didn't know that.
That's Nineveh, that he didn't want to go and warn them about everything, but that was the city of Nineveh, yeah.
Well, this tablet is in the British Museum. I'll probably send you a link just in case you want to go take a look at it on email later, or maybe I'll drop it in a link if I publish this video so people can go see the tablet themselves online. It's the oldest reference to Armageddon. That's the best way to put it. And basically, it's a very short tablet. And it's from Nineveh. It's from the Mesopotamians, but it's also Iraq, right? It's the Assyrians living in Iraq, or Iraq, however you guys say it. And their neighbors were Babylon and the Sumerians, with the Sumerian clay tablets with the Anunnaki. So these people are separated by a little bit of distance, but they're separated by about 2,000 years because the Sumerian clay tablets go back about 5,000 years, and this Nineveh Assyrian tablet goes back 7,000 years, but it's only one tablet, unlike the 150,000 tablets that were found in Babylon. And it basically says that civilization in the future is going to be corrupted, become greedy, and due to that, the gods will destroy it. And the good will, it doesn't say anything about heaven, the good will be moved somewhere and the bad will be destroyed by the gods for creating a corrupt civilization. That's it. It doesn't go into any details.
Wow, that's interesting. So it actually says they'll be taken somewhere, huh?
Well, I would like to read a further translation of it since I just found it about an hour ago. But it kind of deals more with the Armageddon side than the Ascension side.
And it could be moved dimensionally and not spatially even.
It doesn't say.
Yeah.
It doesn't say, or at least the translation that I'm given doesn't say. So I'm going to look into that more because it's more about the corrupt society in the future being created and the gods destroying it because it's corrupt.
Hmm.
So, I mean, that kind of reminds me of modern day, and it reminds me of the story of Noah. It reminds me of a part of the event of what we're talking about.
Hmm. And I also can see destruction having multiple. I mean, you think destruction, you think, an asteroid or something like that. But even if they were to tear down our complete political system, monetary system, that's still destroying it without us even seeing any kind of what people typically think of as like, some kind of world, event that is a destruction in a physical sense instead of like just bringing down these
Yeah,
ruling families and elites and everything. That would be the destruction of it as well, without it really being something that people should fear. So just so people don't think that
exactly.
we're like talking about, the asteroid's going to come and destroy it and we're going to start all over. You can destroy everything we have, tear it all down, and we have something new without seeing something, like what typically comes to mind when you think of destruction.
Exactly. But we don't know because they left the details out, and we need to really find more tablets that
Hmm.
kind of explain that tablet. But that tells us that 7,000 years ago, a scribe with clay and a tool implement wrote down what we're talking about now, 7,000 years later. And that's the earliest written or spoken reference that we can find in history to Armageddon, the apocalypse. And basically, we kind of tie the event, ascension, and rapture and the harvest to Armageddon, the apocalypse. We kind of tie those two things together. I don't know
Hmm.
why, but we do. Now, it's interesting because the Sumerian clay tablets, let's move forward 2,000 years. And I've not read all the translations. I really challenge anybody to. I wish I could. I hope I can read more in my lifetime. But there is so much information that hasn't even been translated. It kind of dramatizes a lot of it, but there are the Anunnaki, and there are the stories of Gilgamesh, which is Noah with the flood. So the gods, they didn't have one god, they had many gods. The gods became angry with their slaves, these humans that they created to mine the gold for the Anunnaki gods who lived on Nibiru.
Hmm.
And Nibiru supposedly passes by every 3,600 years, where they come to harvest, collect their gold. It wasn't meant to say harvest souls, right? Just to
Hmm.
come and get their gold. And they left some gods down to rule the humans, which were created to mine the gold for the Anunnaki. And one of the sons of the Anunnaki gave humans intelligence. Now, what does that sound like? That's like Satan and the snake and the tree of knowledge telling Eve, here, eat of this knowledge and give it to Adam so that you will now have knowledge and no longer be innocent. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of biblical references within those clay tablets. So many it's even hard to name. The only thing that I haven't found yet is a reference to Armageddon and Ascension. But if you then read the Bible, move forward another 2,000 years
Hmm.
and read the Hebrew Bible. Okay, these were from the Israelites coming out of Egypt. Part of the Anunnaki texts go to Egypt to build the pyramids, and then part of the Anunnaki go to South America to build the pyramids. So the pyramid building society is supposedly the Anunnaki, from the ancient Sumerian text. And
Mm.
when you see that it actually goes to Egypt and the Israelites came out of Egypt and then wrote the Hebrew Old Testament, you can see a lot of similarities between the Old Testament and the Sumerian clay tablets about the
Definitely.
Anunnaki.
That's
Now, the
amazing.
word rapture was never used in the Bible. I kept looking for some historical reference for it in Hebrew or Greek or Aramaic, because the Bible was written in Aramaic, translated into Hebrew and Greek, and then translated into English. So we've lost a lot along the way, I'm sure. But
Hmm.
rapture was never included until the 1800s. And it was, people interpreting the Bible said that when Jesus was talking about the harvest, it's always been called the harvest. It's called the harvest in the Anunnaki clay tablets. It was the harvest in the Bible. It's the harvest in Ra, Law of One books, which completely educated David Wilcock on his ascension beliefs, right? It was always called the harvest, and people don't like that word because they think somebody's going to come down and eat you, like aliens are going to come down and
Like we're the crop.
yeah. And rapture was never used until like the 1800s to describe ascension, the harvest, separating the chaff from the wheat. So the Christian Bible is a couple of thousand years later. We're going to move up the timeline now a couple more thousand years. And that is really seen as a correction of the Old Testament. So God isn't trying to smite and kill you anymore. God is forgiving you and loving you unconditionally. You know, there's a lot of corrections in the New Testament on the Old Testament, which is why the Jewish faith said, no, we don't accept that. You're ruining our religion. So off you go. Start your own religion, which they did. And they had to go into Egypt first, back to Egypt. So anything with event, Armageddon, apocalypse, rapture, ascension, you're really talking about a region of the world, the Middle East, over a period of from 5000 BC to present. That's where the whole idea of the event and the rapture and the ascension come from. The Hindu texts, I'm not really into very much, but I've read them. They talk about great battles in the past and in the present, like nuclear battles and spaceships. They can describe spaceships, you know, coming down to determine who will rule Earth. Will it be good or will it be evil? Will it be bad? And the Buddhist is perhaps the most peaceful in that the whole path of ascension is an individual one. It's the path of enlightenment where you become the Buddha. And David Wilcock talked a little bit about it, tying it in back into the event with his rainbow body. Now, what that is in Buddhism, if you've had many, many, many lifetimes here and you have reached, your soul has reached a 3D perfection, and you are all loving and all forgiving, and you're not causing any karma, no cause and reaction with you being here, well, then you have nothing left to learn here. So you have to ascend through your personal path of enlightenment to another state of being. I mean, and who knows, it could be another planet somewhere. It might just be an energy form. You know, it might not be a physical planet. And that's when, upon death, this has supposedly been reported to happen to a few monks. It's very rare. The body disintegrates into a light, a rainbow body. It literally just disappears. The dead body's there. 1 minute, their spirit leaves the body, and the body just kind of disintegrates. So that's where David Wilcock is kind of tying a little bit of Buddhism to the event. But Buddhism doesn't have the event for everybody. Buddhism has the event for you.
Individual basis.
Yeah, the individual path of enlightenment. When you've learned all there is to learn on 3D Earth, you just won't come back here again. You'll be done. You'll be finished with this place and move on up the spiritual ladder. So that, and then we had, there's this whole area. Have you ever read Alice Bailey, Madame Blavatsky, or Rudolf Steiner, Shane?
No, well, I've come across their stuff, but I don't know it well enough to remember exactly what I read.
Okay, so let's hold all this information on biblical, Sumerian, and Nineveh, whatever they were called, Assyrian, writing about the event, which is the Armageddon and the Ascension. So hold that on one hand, because that's very spiritual but biblical related. On the other hand, there's an entire field of occultists who, whether they're good occultists or bad occultists, white magic or black magic, who are also writing about the event. And they tend to write about it in terms of, you're going to know this, a shift. Remember all that talk about the shift years ago? And I kind of trace that back to the 1880s. I haven't gone back further, but I'm sure I could. I just haven't gotten that far. So you've got Madame Blavatsky, this Russian spiritualist, writing and really higher echelons of society in the 1880s. And she spent a lot of time in India, so, and in Europe and in America. So she had a bit of the Hindu and the Buddhist philosophies in her personal experiences. And she comes back to England and America and starts writing about, she channeled a Tibetan master who was telling her how the world is made up of 100% energy. And there's, that's Alice Bailey later. So she's talking about an energetic world, which is really interesting because that predates the atomic age, where now, with quantum science, we know that everything is made up of energy, pure waves, right?
Sorry, I had it muted. Yes.
Oh, sorry about that.
No problem.
So, she was a little bit ahead of her time, and Alice Bailey, they kind of created the Theosophical Society with Rudolf Steiner and the Waldorf schools, and they're all a little bit different, but Alice Bailey took it to a whole new level. And she wrote 19 books, of which I've read 4 already, where she channeled the same Tibetan that Madame Blavatsky did. And in those books, she talks about the shift as opposed to a flash of light and an event. She talks about a gradual shift over like 50 years. You would think that this was supposed to occur around 1990s, where humanity, this is what's really freaky, where humanity would create the new world order. She mentions that over and over and over while quoting the Tibetan, who eventually was identified in her books as Dwal Kul. And this is like the good, positive side of a cult. It's not the negative side of a cult, where love and peace would reign on the earth after a big Armageddon and destruction, and, a really evil kind of selfish society would fall and crumble. And what would replace it would be at the age of Aquarius. She used that term a lot. That's like the year 2000, the age of Aquarius.
And that,
It's around 2000.
whoops, I think you cut out for a second. Okay, you
Oh,
said the age of Aquarius around 2000, and then proceed.
Yep. And she's talking about a new age order around the age of Aquarius, of light and love. And also she mentions the sharing of the world's resources under this new world religion, a one world religion. So she's writing from between the 1920s and the 1940s about a kind of golden age on Earth, but she published it under the Lucifer Publishing Company.
Right. And that caused some problems.
So, yeah, that caused her a lot of problems. So they changed it to the Lucis, Lucis Publishing Company. And yes, it's tied to the Lucis Trust, which is in the United Nations and prints all United Nations materials. So basically, on one of their symbols for the Theosophical Society is the swastika, because that's an ancient symbol that goes back up to 20,000 years ago, kind of representing the sun or earth energy. It's like a swirling vortex. So what happens is you've got this ascension and this Armageddon philosophy in a religious sense and in an occult sense. And I kind of feel that the ruling elite are following the occult
the
philosophy.
Theosophical, but and I think that's sort of what the conclusion I come to is that there was the split at some point. I'm not really sure when it was, but there was a split way back, and you've got even some of the founding fathers, as I read in one of David Wilcock's book, they didn't, even though they used this all-seeing eye symbology and things like that, they didn't really see it like the ruling elite today see it, or at least many of them didn't. It appears that they thought everyone would go through this golden age, or at least some of them did. And there was a split at some point where they thought, well, it's not everybody. The wealth of the wicked is laid up for the just, and they thought of themselves as the just, and the rest of us as wicked. And there was just this split. So that's sort of how I began seeing it. And I don't know if your research has shown
Me
you the same
too.
thing. Oh, okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So somewhere we've had this split of like light worker ascension, light worker golden age, and then you've got the ruling elite, new world order. Ruling elite, one religion, one government, one army. And they don't feel like they go together, but they seem to be coming from the same information. They seem to be, if you trace them back, they really do go back to the Theosophy Society. And she wrote about a shift, and the event is a shift over time. Instead of it being a flash of light and happening overnight, she said it was a gradual process.
Hmm.
So we've got David Wilcock and the Law of One, Ra. David Wilcock said it was going to be an immediate event in 2012, but the writers of Ra, the Law of One, say it's going to be a shift over a period of like 4 decades.
Mm-hmm.
So we have two viewpoints now on how the ascension or the event occurs. Does it happen in a flash, or does it happen gradually over decades? You move into the ascension, into the 5D earth. There's really two camps, two theories of it happening all at once or happening over time. What's interesting is if you look at, I know you follow these channels, the channels that do solar weather and cosmic rays.
Mm-hmm.
We had a kill shot came out of the sun like last week or the week before, and they call it a kill shot because if the earth is in the direct path of that much energy coming out of the sun, it would kill off a lot of life. Not all life, but it would kill off a lot of life. So I've been talking to My Sky's 5D Earth, and we both agree that when you really look at solar weather and cosmic weather, the radiation is increasing. Our magnetic shield is scattered, although they found another magnetic shield from the ocean that's helping. If you look at the increase of the Schumann resonance, the shifting of the pole, we kind of are at a time where with the grand solar minimum, we could have a solar kill shot hit the Earth, and that would be a very big flash of light.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that would be instant ascension for those who are moving on into 5D Earth. And it would be instant reset, start over in 3D Earth for the people who are not moving on.
Well, if you think
So,
about it, knocking out the power grid, like one of these CMEs, if it were to knock out the power grid and it take us a decade to build back up to where we're at, just with the infrastructure of the power, that would be a huge event where a lot of people would die. They wouldn't survive, and it wouldn't
and
be.
some would survive, some would,
Yeah,
and some wouldn't. Yeah. But think about it. That means chemtrails are good for us. That means putting all that reflective crap up there that causes Alzheimer's and autism and all manner of terrible side effects could actually prevent a kill shot, or could it? I don't know. I don't know how successful it would be, but it just means that there might be a hidden purpose for the chemtrails that they're not sharing with us.
yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm on the fence about that. It seems bad, but you know, I don't know. I could go either way with that, and the same way with the rainbow clouds. Me and Biker Babe were talking about how, are these the chemtrails or is it indicative of something else going on? We
Oh
don't
yeah,
really
right. We
know.
were talking right
Yeah,
before we went on the air. We were
yeah.
talking about, is it coming from God and spirit and or alien help, cosmic help with our cosmic friends, or is it literally coming from us spraying all that crap up in the air? It's
Yeah.
like really hard to know. I think so. Really, the only way to know anything is to go inside. If you start to meditate on this stuff, you'll get a gnosis, which is a knowing. It's the Gnosis from the Gnostics.
Hmm.
And that's where the truth, I think, comes from. So that you don't have to flip and flop back and forth. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it true? Is it false? That's a really hard thing to decipher in 3D. But when you meditate, you go straight, you don't go to 5D, you go straight up to source. So you're getting a more clear, genuine information than anything you could find on the internet.
Yeah, and another thing we were talking about is the way you can see those standing wave patterns in the clouds. And because I mentioned this because someone mentioned that it's part of HARP, and that's definitely not off the table for me. That and are these energies coming from HARP or from smart meters like you mentioned right before the show, Eileen, or
Yep.
is it, or the 5G or the cell phone grid? There's so many ideas, but it could be coming from the cosmos or an external benevolent force. We just really honestly don't know. But one thing that keeps coming back to me about this sort of thing, whenever I start diving into it, I just get this sense that everything is as it should be, not to worry about it. It's
Yeah.
all part of this plan.
I get the same message.
Yeah.
I get the same message as you do over and over and over. And I do meditate about an hour a day.
Mm-hmm.
And I get the same message that it's okay. It's going according to plan. Everything is going to work out. Like, it's almost like linear time doesn't exist. Pardon me. And all time is happening at once. And we've already won. We've already survived. We've already created that golden age. We're just going through the process now. We're looking at it step by step. And to do that, we're experiencing it step by step. Because, I mean, otherwise, if you experience the past, the present, and the future all at once, what kind of an experience is that?
Right.
It's instantaneous. So Louise Hay, Wayne Dyer, that whole group of 1970s, 80s spiritual self-help writers kept talking about the shift. They talked about the event occurring over a period of decades. So we really do have a lot of people talking about an instantaneous shift that will come with a cosmic wave or a solar wave. And then we have people saying, well, actually we're already in it. We've been in it since like the 1980s, and we're getting there. We're almost there. We're already it almost means that 3D Earth and 5D Earth are already here right now, which is why we'd be experiencing the Mande1a Effect.
I'm glad you brought that up. I was just thinking about it. I'm like, that's some of the best proof ever, for those who can see it anyway, that things are definitely happening. Because if you know impossible changes are happening to our reality and appear to have always been that way, when you look at it, it's mind-blowing.
It is. And that's what brought us all together. We all literally came together on your channel originally, I think, because of the Mande1a Effect. I think that brought us together.
That's what really woke me up to spirituality and all of that again, because I had sort of just given up on everything, and I was so low. And when I saw this happening, it forced me from that left analytical part of my brain back to the right and say, well, supernaturally, what could be happening here? Because it just didn't make sense at how well micromanaged this effect is. The way some people see it, some people don't. Some of the changes that seem to happen are just incredible,
Well, if our train of thought is true, and it might not be, right? Because we both are people who like sitting on fences. I am, for sure. And I know you are.
Yeah.
If we just follow this conversation from 7,000 years ago to today, and the Mande1a Effect, after we've kind of looked at the shift, we've looked at the event, we've looked at Ascension, Armageddon, the apocalypse, the harvest, 5D Earth versus 3D Earth, it could mean that if the previous writers are correct that it's a process, then 5D Earth and 3D Earth are here. Then every time you see a Mande1a Effect, you're not going anywhere. It's all changing around you because both realities are already here around you. You're in it. You're into realities. So 1 minute you could potentially see things one way, and without moving into a new timeline or dimension or across the universe, you could look the other way and see it differently because they're both here. Everything's here right now. Yeah. And we just have to push it off into its own, it's like we have to push 5D Earth off into its own space.
That's right. Yeah, and it's really amazing that we could be shifting back and forth all the time and have no idea, because we've seen flip-flops. I know I have.
I have.
It's just
and
amazing.
Yet it doesn't discount the wave. It doesn't discount the event happening with instant waves, because we're in the grand solar minimum and because we've got this incredible energy shooting off the sun and we're going through like cosmic rays as well. The event as waves are extremely possible. Mm-hmm. But they might be happening, like you said earlier or yesterday with Michelle, they might be happening all the time. We might have gotten a couple in March and we'll get a couple more in April. And then maybe eventually we'll get one big one. Personally, I don't pray for the event to come quickly in one big wave because I'm enjoying 3D Earth too much with my family, and they're young. So I want them to enjoy this life before, boom,
Right.
say there's a solar kill shot, and that extinguishes most life here, and then the people who are ready, their soul wakes up on a 5D Earth in a completely different resonance, an energetic body, might not even need food. It might live on light or sound. So I guess I'm not rushing towards it, but I know I'm headed for it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, when you really think of it on the higher level, like you were saying earlier from your near-death experience, it's not the end like people really think. It's really the end of a chapter. Even if it seems like it's, all this death and destruction, it's all this orchestrated chaos that doesn't, it seems like the end in 3D, like, you're dead and buried and gone. But even if it played out in these sort of scary seeming ways, it's really just as much as you're playing a video game and you die and you respawn or something like that. On the higher level, when you look at it, you know what I mean? It's not the end like, people have been raised to think, because nobody really knows what happens after life. But I think there's enough scientific proof to show that, it doesn't end when your body dies.
No, it's definitely not an end. The event is not an end. It's actually, like you said, it's a beginning. It's a beginning of a new chapter. And it's a shame that we want to rush to it, because the powers that be, the ruling elite who are practicing this occult Luciferian approach to the event or world affairs, and some occult stuff is good. It's very positive, because occult is seeing the unseen. That's all. So some of it's good, some of it's bad. I think the ruling elite are practicing a bad form of it, a negative, selfish form of it. And they're kind of making us really kind, loving souls just want to get off the planet quickly, because it's so uncomfortable sharing space with them. Don't you think?
Yeah, they're playing their part of the bad guy really well.
I know. And it makes us want to hurry along, hurry up, event, hurry, come and get us, because it's really hard living with these baddies down here. That's a shame that it's that difficult. But maybe, as the Buddhists say, all things are good. Maybe they are the catalyst to help us.
Yeah, that's hard for people to get
ascend.
It's hard for people to wrap their head around that. But I've learned to come to that perspective that you really need the duality to really learn to love. And that seems to be the lesson in all of this, is to learn to love through it all,
Yeah, and even love your enemy. I mean, not good people are easy to love. The ones who are really bad, they're really hard to love. And Ascension is loving those really difficult people to love. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. It's like, I think there was even something in the Bible that said, anybody can love their friends and the people they love, but it's the challenge is loving your enemy.
That is a challenge.
Yeah.
That is a really hard one. I find it easier, if this is going to help anybody, because we all want to ascend. We all want that atonement, don't we? Which, if you break atonement down, it's at 1 mint. That's your atonement. You get to ascend. You do your ascension through atonement. This is all biblical, right?
Yeah.
And atonement broken down is, ascend is I am sending. It's sending us off somewhere else, out of 3D, off of the earth, spiritually somewhere else. And atonement, the way you ascend is through atonement, and that's at 1 mint.
I like that.
Yeah. So if you look at your enemy, okay, we don't like to have enemies, especially us light workers, because we like to love everybody, and we kind of do. Mm-hmm. But the people who challenge you, who are doing really unjust things and cruel things and bad things for humanity, the earth, or life, the way to love them is to step your mind above them and above you and go to the next level, where you're looking down at earth and you see all of humanity as one. You see this one group, this one organism on a planet called Earth, and we're referring to that one organism as humanity. And because it's impossible to hate all of humanity, when you see children and the beauty in people and how good they really are, it's impossible to hate them. Then that allows you to love all of humanity. And then you bring your consciousness back down into earth and you see there are all kinds of forms of humanity, but you still love them all.
Yeah, and another thing to add to what you were just saying is I've realized that once you look at people like that and think, if I was put in their same exact position, raised in the same family, in the same culture, with the same choices, I might have ended up like that person. I'm not beyond being just like them. And then that makes you more thankful that you didn't become like that. So, I mean, when you think of it like that, and one of the things that helped me was hearing that little boy talk about some of their ritual abuse and stuff in that one clip, and then you realize that if you were exposed to that at that age, and it was just normal to do these crazy things that they do, it would just be normal. Just like we look at another culture and we see the food they eat and we're like, ew, gross, I would never eat that. Yeah, you would if you were raised in their household, eating it from week to week, and it was normal to eat that. You know, but we create shows like Fear Factor about eating things that people just eat on a normal basis in other countries. But to us, it's so disgusting that we can't imagine eating a bug or whatever it is. But there's people that's their meal in other places in the world. So
yeah,
if
so true.
So if you see yourself as being put in their shoes, that whole empathy thing to the next level, you know, you can totally see how any one of us could have ended up in one of these baddies' shoes. And we should be thankful
And
that
again,
we didn't.
you are now in your mind, you're stepping out of your body to get to that viewpoint. You've just gone, I'm not going to look at that person through my eyes where I see how bad and corrupt and evil you are. I'm going to step out of my body above it and go, hey, if I were in those shoes, if I was living that life, maybe I'd do the same based on what I knew, what I was taught, you know, my environment. So that was a real good get out of my head, Shane. That was a good practice.
Yeah, because a lot of times these people, what they do is so deplorable. It's like they're monsters to you. I mean, they are literally monsters until you can step out of yourself and say, how did they end up this way? You know.
You just segued to the one thing I have found in all of the writings on the shift and the event is that they all tend to agree, whether they're occult or biblical, that the goodies who choose not to harm others, including animals or the earth, get to ascend. They get to send their house for more experiences. And the baddies that harm people, harm animals, harm the environment are based on fear and greed. They do everything out of fear and they do everything out of greed, actualization of their own pleasures, their own desires, etc. They don't get to ascend their spirit further until they've learned the lessons of 3D dualistic world. And if there is like an Armageddon, they just get vaporized back into the atoms of the 3D world and they get to start all over. They get to come back. They get to have more 3D lives until they get it.
And that's sort of when you picture a divine creator God as a loving father, you would see how he wouldn't, I guess, get impatient or run out of chances for you to get it right. You know, it's like one of our little kids learning to walk and they fall down. You're there to help pick them back up and try it again, try it again. And if we do that as humans, you know, the Bible says in one place that if you're evil and you know how to treat your kids, how much greater will your Father in heaven treat you? And I think that's a good analogy. That's one that I sort of use to tear down religion all the time, because some of the things that religion says God is willing to do is like burn us forever or torture us forever. None of us would do to our own child. We wouldn't even send our child to the corner for eternity, let alone torture them at the same time. It's so ridiculous. And then when you follow this stuff back and you find that the origins are from man that was trying to control us to begin with, then you can see that this never came from God to begin with. And it's clear.
Yeah. I love it when you bring it down into the human experience. That's the hermetic loss, as above, so below. Can you imagine saying to your toddler, sit on that stair forever. You are never getting off that stair.
Right. And that's not even torturing them other than, maybe they die of boredom, but
Yeah, the stair is hell. It's
Right.
hell now. But think about it. If you have to be like reabsorbed into a cataclysm and start over again, life on Earth, I mean, maybe that is the hell. Maybe the heaven is the people who ascend to a different place of living, whether it's a planet or an energy. Or if you have to stay here, that would make this hell. But I don't see Earth as a hell. But I can see where people who got trapped in 3D would feel that way.
oh yeah.
Because I see the beauty of Earth. I see heaven and hell here. I'm sitting on that fence. I see it all. I see the good and the bad. But I have to say that I really do think that the good far outshines the bad, and there are far more good people on the planet than bad. Unfortunately, the bad people tend to rule the good people because we allow a system of not barter and trade or coexistence, cooperation. We have a system where you work to get as much money as possible. And the more greedy you are, the more money you get. And the more money you get, the more you can put into your campaigns. And the more you put into your campaigns, the greater the chances of getting elected into a position of power. So we base our power structures on greed. Greed fuels not only the economy, but it fuels government.
Yeah. It's so true. It's the system is completely backwards. And then if you think of the news and just media in general, they always focus on these types of people that they consider successful, or they focus on murders and robberies, and it just puts it in your mind that everyone's bad, or that it's. I think of it as like we've got all these light workers or just good people as sleeper cells. You don't ever hear about them, but if something happened like the Houston flood, when all these people came out and were donating their buses or their boats and their time to help other people, that we don't hear enough of that type of thing. But all of these wonderful people are out there, loving people that are willing to help someone regardless of their religion or their race or anything, their social status or anything. They're willing to go out in their boat in their free time, and they're happy to go out and help rescue people. And we don't hear enough of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, the quiet heroes, the invisible heroes.
Yeah.
And they're all around us. They're all around us, and they're very quiet. And they're even listening to these shows, and they're not making comments because they're a little too shy to make comments, or they don't want to make comments. They just want to listen in. But they're the quiet, unseen light workers that just keep feeding this energy, feeding their love and their forgiveness and incredible ascension energy to the planet just by being here and living here and interacting with.
Yeah, definitely.
So, gosh, we've covered a lot. I would love in the future to just talk about the near-death experience and keep that separate, because I've done some research on it, and just basically they found that 15% will report going to a hellish place, and 85% of the adults report going straight to a heaven-like place. That kind of sums up, the ratio of good people on this planet to bad. I mean, we might only have like 10% of humans are greedy and will do anything for money, and 90% would give you the shirt off their back. But the 10% are so greedy that they've managed to get positions of control and power. So they're ruling or dominating the 90% who are very good. And that's kind of going back to the event and ascension and the shift, because it's making a lot of people here uncomfortable. And they're like, hurry up, shift. Come on, I want to be in a good place where there's no greed and where we're cooperative. There's no hunger. There's no war. There's no separation. That's what we're all trying to create here. And as long as we're on 3D Earth, we might as well enjoy it and help bring 5D Earth into 3D Earth, instead of going, oh my God, this place is so bad, I want to run to 5D Earth. Instead, we can reverse that process and say, no, I'm going to bring it here. I'm going to bring 5D Earth here now.
Definitely. And I think a good point to that is that we are all working together, and we can see the progress being made, and that should be enough to help us through, and not to be so impatient, because we can see progress being made. And then the Mande1a Effect is one of those things where you can see that people say it's happened for a while, but people haven't noticed it. If it has, people haven't noticed it like they're noticing it now, which is one of the reasons why I'll segue into the book that we're working on, because we know a lot of people aren't on the internet and aren't on YouTube to find out about this information, and we're working together to come up with a book that is a tool to reach some of the people that might not be on YouTube or the internet. And for a lot of you guys in the chat that might have someone in your family like that, and you want to present the Mande1a Effect to them in an unbiased way, or with at least with our opinions, and leaving it, approaching it objectively, I should say, and then just to let them know about it. And so yeah, I'm really excited about this. And
me too. I saw Michelle's comment in the show yesterday. Was awesome to put in the examples, because sometimes when I talk to people about this and they want to know more but they're not convinced, I'll go look it up on YouTube, and then they go to those channels which will be all hell and damnation, and they're like, I'm not going to look up the Mande1a Effect, it's too scary. And I'm like, darn, it'd be nice to have a reference on the changes that's safe, where you can show your mother, look at these changes that have occurred, without scaring her.
Yeah, that's so awful that you see a lot of people are just pushing the fear thing, and it's a lot of times it's because they themselves are scared. So I understand it, but at the same time, it's just it's hard to get to those channels where they're saying, hey, maybe this isn't such a bad thing happening. People are waking up.
Yeah. Shane, there is no evidence right now that I can point to of true demons. And there's no evidence of aliens are bad and they're coming to get us. So any of these fears that we put in Satan and demons, and now people are mixing the two together and saying all aliens are demons. Have you caught those videos too? Yeah. Where any life off Earth is demonic? That's just creating more of the 3D dualistic fear mongering. And we are so beyond that. We're so past that. If the aliens wanted to come and do anything to us, they would have done it by now. Why wait?
And a lot of that comes from the religious groups that say that the Bible says we got demons here, they're fallen angels. But even from that point of view, supposedly 1/3 of the angels fell. So that would still leave you with twice as many good aliens. If you think aliens are demons, then you should at least consider what the Bible says about 1/3 of the angels fell. That leaves twice as many, 2 to 1, of good aliens to bad aliens or demons. If you want to think of it that way.
You're right. You're right. We're in the majority. Goodness, forgiveness is in the majority on Earth and off of Earth.
Definitely. Yeah, but Natasha was saying earlier that she felt the same way. Natasha, that was on last week, was saying the same way, that she's not ready to just get plucked out of here. She's
I saw that. Yeah.
So that's and I think that's we got to meet in the middle, sort of. I think things are happening.
I'm getting comments too from people who are saying, you know what? Thank you. I'm glad we can stay longer, because the way I feel about it is, if it happens tomorrow, great, and if it happens during my next lifetime, great. When it happens, great. Enjoy the journey instead of just trying to enjoy the destination, Yeah.
And that gets back to the whole thing we were just talking about a little earlier, that things are working out as they're supposed to, not to be worried about any of that, So.
Yeah, and that gives you a lot of peace. And I think people get peace here. And on Josee's channel and a lot of the community's channels, I pop in and out of them. Kev, I can't mention them all. I'm Go-Kart. We just keep going in and out of everybody's channels. And you go there and you just feel peace. You feel accepted. You feel loved. It's just peace. And I think we were missing that. I think we were feeling isolated in our work.
Definitely, yeah.
And I have to mention that Mande1a and Spirit Walker are going to be contributing with you and me to the book. And Mande1a has organized a little Mande1a get-together in, what is it, Messina, Virginia? Am I saying the town correctly?
Yeah, I'm not getting, my internet's kind of bad now. So if Dad or one of you guys can pop it in her link to her channel, that would be awesome, because I'm running too slow to navigate around YouTube and grab that link. But
July 14th. I'm going to try to go. You know, I've put myself down to talk to people. It's going to be very informal. I think it's one afternoon with a small group, July 14th. And the way to sign up is to contact Mande1a.
yeah, she's sending out tickets now, but you have to, what is it, email her or?
Yep, you got to email her for information. She's trying to keep the trolls at bay.
Right. And then she'll mail out the tickets, and you have to put information in where she can verify your YouTube channel. I saw the video, I just can't remember it, but hopefully somebody can paste it into the chat over here, and then you guys can just click it and go right there, because it's going to be on the East Coast in Virginia, isn't that correct?
Yep, July 14th.
July
So
14th.
they've got the date, they've got the town, but she's keeping the location private because it's going to be a small gathering. It's not going to be a huge conference.
Yeah, I don't blame her there. And we're going to try to get together for a conference. Are we
Next
still
year.
talking about Chicago next year?
Yeah, I mean, didn't we say that's kind of like in the middle? And then if Chicago is successful, we could plan one for LA maybe the following year, or Denver. We could try to hit each region, but one a year. So bringing Mande1a affected people together, speakers and community and chatters and commenters.
Yeah, I like the Chicago idea, because I think it's far enough north that it wouldn't be too incredibly far for some of the people up there on the other side of the Great Lakes in Canada.
Yep,
You know.
it's kind of Midwestern. So maybe they could drive, and it certainly wouldn't be in the winter months
Right.
with all that snow. So yeah, I think the Mande1a effect is just the starting point. It's like first you notice the Mande1a effect, then you hook up with some people who are also noticing the Mande1a effect, and next thing you know, boom, you're into the event, you're into the awakening. Shane, you were talking about the quantum awakening. I use that a lot. The shift, the polar shifts, the grand solar minimum. It kind of opens up the world. Just changes the minute you're Mande1a affected. Everything changes.
Exactly. It's
Personally, I think the whole point of this Mande1a effect and being this aware to see the changes is so that we can see that matter responds to our thoughts and our feelings. And in 100 years or 200 years, when everybody on the planet knows that matter responds to your thoughts and your feelings, it's going to be a completely different world.
Oh yeah. I really look forward to the time of just sitting under a tree and manifesting a plate of fruit or something. You know what I mean? That just
You
seems
are
so freaking
so
awesome.
wonderful. You could have said, I can't wait till I sit under a tree and manufacture a plate of gold.
Right.
No, you want fruit.
Well, I just see it as, oh gosh, that would be awful if we don't get rid of the gold by then. Just, I imagine the beach is riddled with precious gems and stones to where you don't have to worry about people going along and collecting them all. And you can leave the beaches looking beautiful and, glistening all these different beautiful colors. And yeah, I'm totally, why do you need gold if you can just manifest it, whatever you need, when you need it, right?
What are you going to do with gold? You can't eat it, I mean, come on. I mean, if you don't have to make money to survive, then there's no point to making money anymore. It doesn't have any value.
Yeah.
It really doesn't.
Well, gosh, it was wonderful to have you on again. I definitely want to have you back soon to discuss the NDE, maybe next week. I'm pretty much open next
anytime.
week,
We'll just talk about death and dying and the positivity of it. It will not be a dark show, trust me.
Yeah, so many times the subject can be. And, you did a great job on your last video covering it, I thought, which is actually linked below. So you guys definitely want to go and subscribe to Eileen. She puts out great content. She's super knowledgeable about a whole array of stuff. And I
just love chatting with you because you make it so much more like fun. And when I do my videos, it's like, this is so serious, but people still like them. But when I'm on with you, it's just laughs and joy and fun. But we cover the same stuff.
Yeah, I'm the same way by myself too. I was wanting to play a video of a Mande1a Effect video I did a while back, and I was like, man, I look so serious. And gosh, it's like, that's why I love having Josee on with me too, because she'll, she always cracks jokes and catches me off guard and stuff like that.
Oh, so she sure does.
It does
she
help
sure
to have
does.
another person
Yes,
with you.
Yeah. Definitely. And it just changes the tone, because I guess this is serious stuff, but we can't look at it that way. We have to keep shining our light on even the serious stuff and just enjoy it. Literally, just enjoy it all.
Definitely.
Oh, thank you, Shane. And I'll talk to you soon for sure.
All right, lots of love and light to all of you all in the chat, and we will see you tomorrow. I'm going to be on with Lisa tomorrow afternoon. Hopefully I'll get the computer things worked out, but either way, I will see you guys tomorrow. Lots of love and light. Have a good one.
Big hugs, big kisses to everybody. Sorry I can't see your chat, but I am sending you a virtual hug, each and every one of you.
Peace.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.